Welcome to Point Counterpoint video podcast, where we illustrate and debate concepts surrounding leadership, business, personal achievement, and the new math in a way that may make you think twice before you implement that new idea you just learned all about on the internet. Welcome. I'm Michael Rampolla.
And I'm Brad James.
And today we welcome you to episode 88 of Sketchy Ideas, which we are calling What's It Worth to You? Or How to Calculate the True Value of a Project. But before we get into that, let's get a word from our sponsors. Brad, over to you.
Hey, friends. Well, now we are in quarter two. It's been a couple weeks. That means if you haven't been listening to the last few messages that I've laid out for you, if you haven't been executing your marketing, you're missing out. You got to do something. It's typically that time of year where you kind of reflect on all the goals that you didn't hit in the first quarter and you go, how do I do it in the next quarter? Well, now's the time. So if you're interested in getting some help on this, email my friends over at Cream City Marketing and they'll help you out. Email Erin at creamcitymarketing.com and she'll schedule an appointment with you to figure out what you need. Back to you, Michael.
As a business owner, there are times when waiting for others to go first is a good thing. And there are times when being the first to leap off the cliff is the right course of action. And there are times when both of those options sound equally attractive or terrifying. How do you decide which is which and when is the right time to move and in what direction? Well, that's where strategic planning comes in. Spirity supports all of our members and can support you in coming up with a strategic plan that enables you to capitalize on the current trends, weather the storm, and achieve your most important priorities. You know us for long-term coaching and support. Yes, we can also do short-term strategic planning and problem solving as well. How do we help you? Let's find out. Reach out to us at spirity.com to learn more. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. This is episode 88, in which Brad and Michael explore all of the sketchy ideas related to calculating the true value of a project, or in some cases, the true cost of a problem. Now, I'm looking forward to this, Brad, because this is one of those times where we've got the broad strokes of a framework, but not the details, and we're going to build it as we go. And I think this just kind of gets back to the core of how we kind of conceived this show in the first place, which was the conversations that we were having anyway. Let's put them out there and bring everybody else in.
Good or bad, right?
for good or bad, right or wrong. It's building in the open, right? It's like open source framework building.
Yeah.
It's like publishing the code.
Yeah.
Here's how we did that.
All right. So you had brought up how you're helping a lot of people figure out the actual pricing models around their services, right? Or their solutions that they're bringing.
Exactly.
This is something, for example, for me, that I've had to take a ton of time to figure out and then equate. So I'll just share this personal story. Back when I got started in consulting, we were like, how do we price what we do, right? And this was before you actually knew what you were doing and before you understood. And so you just picked the price. It wasn't until we had done it hundreds of times that we took a step back and dissected what actually we were solving for our clients. So let's take into consideration the sales solution that we implement at legacy businesses that are dealing with transition right now, where the founder or the second generation owner is beginning to retire. And along with that person retiring, they are losing maybe their best sales rep or their only sales rep. And they're trying to figure out, how do we continue to keep this business going when I pass it on to, we'll call them junior, right? And so junior, or the third, if that's, whatever.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I had done some deep dives after and post-mortem with these clients where I actually understood how much value we were bringing and how much we were undervaluing the services that we were giving. Now, I'm all about, as a marketer, right, always giving more value than you're receiving back, right? In the words of everything. And I think that anybody who's running a quality business is doing that. At the same point in time, for example, if you're a marketer and you're doing offer stacks and everything else, whenever you get that stack at the back end, you're like, well, what is the actual value of this? This is an exercise where this will be helpful for you to begin to understand the value of each of those things in your offer stack. So do you remember what do you remember what I mean by offer spec, Michael?
Go for no.
No?
Let's refresh and give everybody the same terminology. So go for it.
So offer spec. So at the end of a webinar, at the end of a presentation, at the end of a proposal, when you're line iteming out all of the stuff, products, services, whatever,
Here's
you end up going, hey,
yeah,
you know, like this is 1, this is 2, this is you know, the software, right?
right.
And then you do like it's valued at, and then you go, no, you know, and then at the end of it, you get down to, you know, my time, this cool template thing, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Got it.
And then you get down here and you're like, you know, total value, and then you cross it off.
Right, red line
this
it.
Is the number that I'm talking
Yours
about.
for just yeah. So it's the value of the stat, and I like that because lots of people are familiar with those. That you've seen these. It's the offer. It's in your Facebook feed, right? All of these things for just. But how do we decide the value of the things that we've now just discounted to a ridiculous number?
Right.
Those inclusions, if you put them all together, I would call that like a whole program or a complete solution, right?
Right. Yep.
So really flipping that the other way, it's okay, I'm going to do everything that you need me to do to solve this problem. What is everything? Everything is that list, right? Here's all the things you would need. You're here, you're trying to get there. What's all the things you need to get from here to there? Here's the whole list. What is each of them worth to you? There's the true value or the total value, which I like. You immediately flipped price to value, which I think is one of the big questions here, which is how do I price what I do isn't even the right question.
Right.
What is the value of what I'm doing is where we're trying to go, because how do I price what I do? All right, if we're building into this, price, is just a part of the story. It's one slice.
And typically when we start, we're not even talking about the center one that you just outlined. We're talking about the top, right? So do you want to, I guess at the end of the day, the reason why this is a good exercise to go through is because for us, when we were looking at it, we were offering time, we were building systems, we had trainings that we were implementing, we were putting in customized solutions on the software end and integrations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we were building it out into just a chunk of like, hey, we knew what our time cost was because a lot of it was cost that we were implementing and we were adding a margin. Whereas if we looked at it in the post-mortem, asking the amount of value that we brought, that it saved or created profit for our clients was the other side of this. So there was our cost on one side and there was the value that it brought to the other side, which I know we're going to get into. So I think running through this exercise, and there's a bunch of ways to do it, and that actually seems like a good episode for next week about how to actually break down some of this, but today start from the top, break down. Tell me about this picture that you drew, because it kind of looks like.
Well, okay, so it could be it's sketchy, Brad. You know better. Nicole's already
like one of my drawings.
Plenty hard time for this.
Looks like abstract art. It looks excellent.
Thank you. If it's abstract, it's probably worth more. So the idea here, I don't know. So it's an iceberg, isn't it obvious? It's an iceberg. It is an abstract conceptual iceberg built of polygons, but it is nonetheless an iceberg. And the idea here is when I'm looking at that total value conversation, how do I price what I do? What's it worth to you? The other time this conversation comes up, and I'm often, how do I value it? How do I price it? I'm doing a lot of work with people who are providing a service where there isn't a tangible cost of goods. It's not, I bought this thing at retail, I have my margin on my markup, here's my operation, my distribution costs, that calculation is X. But when you're a service provider, you're solving a problem, making a pain go away, or doing something for somebody that they can't do for themselves, or accelerating. You're adding a value that's a multiplier type value.
Yep, that makes sense.
And a lot of times what people are doing is that the default is what's my time worth, right? Like you said, price on time.
Right. Yep.
And it's
and then they just add a margin on top. Yeah.
Right. That's time worth times hours. Right. And now you're charging me on my hours. And when I frame this out, I say that's how contractors charge. That's contractor pricing. Consultant pricing is in terms of that's contractor pricing is in terms of my time and my effort. Consultant pricing is in terms of your outcomes and your value.
Which is very different.
Very different. Because I'm already doing for you. And there's a consultant's mindset. And I've worked for years on my own and trained others on theirs. And one person who was internal employee, and I taught her, here's how to think like a consultant. She said, it totally flipped. She said, it completely opened up my world, completely changed how I was trading my time for my salary and had me focusing instead on what are the few things that only I can do where I'm adding unique and distinct value. And the value of my contribution where I'm doing a thing that others can't do, but actually that comes easily to me is so much greater to any organization, whether I'm an outside consultant or an internal consultant with a mindset.
Right.
It's not trading time for money. It's applying my expertise where it delivers the most value. And that's always a bigger number. It's always a bigger number.
Right.
So in our iceberg, metaphorical and conceptual, the way I'm looking at it is that there's three parts to it. So if we put price at the top, this is going to be, and again, we're building this as we go, so we might work with our terms. But this is the immediate cost of the problem, meaning what's it costing you to have that problem right now? What's a simple efficiency? It could be let's say it's manufacturing. What's the cost of I don't know of a 5% inefficiency or a 3% error rate, right? That cost is obvious. We can figure that out.
Yep.
That's part one. Now, part two is what are the, I don't know, ancillary related. There's always another part to this story. And I don't know where I want to put this on the framework, but I guess here's the other two parts. And Brad, help me build this because that's the point of this, right? So there's the money I'm losing right now.
Right.
There's
opportunity cost. Yep.
Opportunity cost. There's the money I could be getting if I fix it.
Yep.
Which maybe that's I don't know if that's opportunity cost. And then there's the third part, which is like a multiplier. So if I solve the problem now, that solution will work for not just right now, right? That solution might carry out 2 or 3 years. That's a multiplier. Or that solution actually frees up other things. I'm spending money on this other outdated piece of equipment or software that is really just serving the problem that I already have. And I can actually do away with that part of the solution. Or I can, now this enables me a new capability. I can take it to another place. I can outsource it. There's always this other, what else could we then do? Or what are we Tachwati doing already that we don't need to be doing anymore because we've been dealing with this. We've been buying Band-Aids all this time.
Okay, so this is, I would make if this is an iceberg, can you just mark where the water line would be? You're talking it would be at that cost, right? That's where most people.
Let's do that. Let's put the water line there.
Most people tend to make their iceberg so there's very little up top, and they don't go underwater to explore it, right? Tip
of the iceberg, right?
Yeah, tip of the iceberg. And I think what you're describing in those other ones, I would look at like, okay, if we got cost, then the next thing would be is the opportunity cost aspect of it, because that's a time thing, right? That's a resource allocation. Yeah. So people look at money on the top, right?
This is going to be money, expense. Yeah.
Yep. Expenses. Then they look at time and resources, right, of deployment that are going into things that are fixing it. I would make your multiplier that bottom chunk that would be end up most of the bottom triangle that you're talking about. That's your multiplier, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at it,
which can be different things depending on the situation.
Right. And I guess I look at it from that standpoint. So if you're really, when you look at the people who build offers and they build out their multipliers and their big offers in their offer stack, that multiplier tends to be the one where they know, hey, I know if you put in the most money here, you're also going to get the most growth out of it. So that's where when you're talking about value ladders and everything else, that's like your giant one where people aren't always ready to make that investment. So therefore, in your pricing, you end up pricing it literally for expenses for the small people, right? The opportunity cost, which tends to be how you're making it, going, hey, instead of putting effort into constantly putting out fires and Band-Aids and everything else, right?
Right.
Your resource allocation. And then, so you end up putting a bunch of small Band-Aids on things. And then the multiplier effect is now that you're actually getting a whole solution, you actually see drastic growth.
Yep.
In your business.
I like that. So opportunity cost can be either things I'm missing out on or things new access that's created by eliminating this surface piece, this expense.
Yep.
Getting me to neutral to zero, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm contractor thinking, if I'm contractor time and materials pricing it, that's all I and the client, again, I'm putting this in sales terms, that's all myself and the client can probably come to easy terms on.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
I have to be less expensive than the current expense.
Yeah, that's the commoditized version of what you're doing, right? That's
exactly
most freelancers, it's most contractors, it's most people who don't know how to value what they do outside of time or time, labor, cost of goods.
Yep.
Right.
This is the, well, would I pay somebody else to mow my lawn? Well, what would I pay myself to mow my lawn? Right. Like that's the simplest thing in the world. But it's now the second tier is, what could I do with my time if somebody else was mowing my lawn?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And that's like new access and something else I could be doing with that time. Now, if I have somebody else mowing my lawn, they're actually a professional, not just me with my lawnmower. Right. Now, what else does that do for my yard? Would they take better care of it than I would when I occasionally get to it? Right. Because they're doing a maintenance schedule. Maybe they are a professional. Maybe maybe there's maybe this growth multiplier is, what could I do with that extra hour every 3 days? How I choose to invest that hour every 3 days opens up a new opportunity for me. Now I'm actually doing my own side hustle during that time, which isn't lawn mowing, by the way. And in that time now I'm actually, discovering some new thing I couldn't do before.
Well, take it even further, right? Like make
it big.
I think, give me an example of a client who you're working with.
So person I was talking with earlier this week, actually, no, let me do it a different way. Yeah. Okay. So person I was talking with earlier this week, he does similar work to what I do. He, helps manufacturers basically find efficiency, helps business owners in the more of that we make stuff space. And for him, it's, he can see what's obvious and on the table is what it's, what the inefficiency is costing us.
Yes.
Yep. In an error rate or anything like that. And so this is the easy and obvious part of the pricing. And he has to be at the, when we first started talking, he knows he has to be less expensive over the 90-day term he's going to work on the project than the current 90-day expense of that problem, which is logical on the one sense as a very small frame, but obviously missing the rest of the story.
Right, because he's not connecting the dots to the rest of the symptoms, which is part of this whole challenge, right? So if you're a consultant, part of it, you're getting paid for your brain more than you're getting paid for actually doing the solution.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that he wasn't identifying the opportunity cost or the ancillary symptoms, which probably needs to fall in there somewhere. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is right. So like an iceberg or, a buried treasure, you have to keep digging, right? And this goes back, so connect back, Nicole, to questions, right? How do we get below this surface obvious thing, which is probably in some cases why the client either reaches out for help or how you get into the conversations, because we're in agreement on this part at the top, right? I need help with X.
Yep.
I want X to go away.
Yep.
And I'm commodity pricing on that. If I can get into a reasonable conversation and I can start digging with some good questions, right? I think I can reasonably get to this piece. And if we can come to agreement on that piece, then what that opens them up to, could we look at this, a little bit further? Right. And then, let me see what else we might be able to find. And this is less about questions and more about, I feel like, adding ideas.
Do me a favor, can you draw a big boat on the bottom, the Titanic, maybe too soon.
Like
I don't know.
At the bottom or crashing into the iceberg?
Yeah, at the bottom.
At the bottom of the
Right?
sea, we
Just
want to
think about-
shipwreck?
Yeah.
Okay. Prep.
Yeah, I want to see, because what comes along with shipwrecks?
Coral reefs and fish, oil spills. I don't know where you're going. Treasure.
There you go.
Ah, all right. Well, I can draw a treasure chest better. We'll do that. Ooh,
My point is this: I think if you look at it from the standpoint of the deeper you go, the more likely you are to get notoriety, credibility, value, whatever. Because if you get somebody down to the Titanic that sunk on the bottom of the ocean,
yeah.
Now what are people going to do for you? What are they going to pay you?
They're going to pay me in wealth and riches, I would hope.
Whatever you ask for most of the time, right? Because you're now not just because and this is if you run an agency, this is where the results stuff comes in. This is where if you can say, hey, you invest X, I will give you 10X or 20X or 3X. Now you're not just dealing with the expenses, you're dealing with, hey, I know what you're going to make. And therefore, it's the same thing, even if you're running a service business, right? That truly is a commoditized business, okay? Some of those opportunity costs, right? The worry, the having to follow up, the feelings around it, hey, those are all big things. But if you can take it even deeper, prime example, right? With all the hosting businesses with the crypto mining stuff. We get a lot of clients who are husbands who have a couple units running at home.
Oh yeah. Spare bedroom in the basement.
Significant other says, get this out of my home. And it becomes a multiplier effect because now they realize, hey, look, great. Now I don't have to worry about the time of actually plugging it in, monitoring it every once, just monitor it once every while. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to make sure things are up and running. I don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff. Plus, multiplier effect, wife is happy, right? Or
that is a growth multiplier. I completely agree. It is certainly a barrier to growth in its current state. So yeah, let's right. I love that example. That's fantastic. Yeah, because
you got to look at it that way with every business that you're running, whether it's mowing lawns, consulting, happy wife, happy life. Yes.
Amen.
Nicole, yes.
Correct.
My point is though, is that if you dig deeper and understand, because nobody really thinks about that.
Right.
It's hey, and the reason this is important is because it's helping you frame how to position the offer. Because typically positioning that offer in the perspective of, in that example, it's not about the equipment running up and running, right? The power, the time, right? Yes, you can do it. Now the opportunity cost, but then the hit out of the park is, hey, what do you think your wife would do if you got this out of the home and just had residual income coming in, and now you can spend more time with her? Those are all things now multiplier effect wholeheartedly, especially right after. Hey, thank you for getting it out, right? Lay out whatever benefits come from it, right?
Absolutely.
In the sales aspect, what we learned when we were doing all this consulting is we learned, hey, we got rid of a whole bunch of training aspects. Now they didn't have to deal with onboarding, which means they could eliminate something. So they could take that salary and position it somewhere else, or that time of that HR person and position it somewhere else. From a systems integration standpoint, now I don't have to hire a developer. I can just outsource it for somebody who knows it. Therefore, the time is good, so we can redeploy that somewhere else, either in bringing in new sales reps, or hey, the last one is you will actually generate leads with the system. Wait, so now we know that we're getting a lead to you. Coming in.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So if you look at it from a business standpoint too, you will end up finding the different multipliers that speak to your clients, and it's very different for everybody. But I think that this is just step one of beginning to figure it out. Breaking this down, which we'll go into next week, but outlining what those things are, because the tip of the iceberg is typically the symptom of what the client is looking for. And you have to lead them through your questions. This is why fact finding is great, especially if you're doing complex sales. fact finding through it, or in a funnel, you fact find through it by laying out the right message. And then the hit at home is in the last thing. If they stick around to the very, very end and all of a sudden they get it, boom, right? But that's why you also incrementally sell people into it too if you're a consultant. So fragmenting and splintering your offers out so you can get them there. Typically, that last big offer isn't going to happen until you've shown results in the expenses, and then the opportunity cost, and then they're open to the growth multiplier.
So first part is the pain and the symptom. Asking questions gets us to root causes and the true need, which is often hard for the person with the pain to articulate, right? That's why we go to the doctor, right? I don't know why this is happening. Also that, right? I've got the pain.
Why it's underwater.
Correct. Right? It's not obvious. I've been dealing with this part for so long, I've come to just live with it. Right? I've learned to live with it, right? It's the I'm trying to come up with I don't know if I got a good one for that, but I've got this workaround that I've come up with, which is not ideal, but it's there. And when I hear chiropractors talk about what they do, it feels like this.
Yes.
Right. I've got this thing here, right? Well, I've been taking X for that or doing Y for that thing for so long. And then, well, really, that's a symptom of 3 layers below that. Your spine's out of whack. And then we fix it like, I had no idea. And all these other things go away, so to speak, too, because really that whole thing being out of alignment, let's leverage that metaphor, is causing other things to be out of alignment as well. And this is just the one that's currently causing me enough pain to complain about it.
Yeah.
Right. And managing that pain and that symptom can be done, but that's actually here's the other thing. If I'm positioning the offer, that is a multiplying expense, right? That's every single time, every month, whatever. Like I've just learned to buy that medication, buy another, bottle of Tylenol. That's one kind of expense. Now I make that go away. I find out other things that were a problem, and that stuff goes away. Now I get down to that root. But the long-term results and outcomes, this is where it really changes the game. And this, if you're really trying to sell for the big show, so to speak, this is where you really see that. And now I'm going to chiropractic and physical training. Somebody who I know who runs, personal training studios talks not about anything that they do. He focuses on what you will be able to do as a result of what we are doing. And he sells that. Like he sells golfing. He sells walking the course. He sells playing with your grandkids. He sells all of that, because that's really this part here. That's the life quality growth multiplier thing, which is hard to quantify, but it's so much bigger.
The treasure chest.
That's the treasure chest.
That's the treasure chest, because at the end of the day, that's what people really want. We as human beings think about the symptoms. We've forgotten how to dream and think about the what ifs, because we're so dealt with the noise and everything else that happens, that we feel the only thing we can solve incrementally is the symptoms, which is why Band-Aids, which is why, when you talk about, like you talked about with the chiropractor, right? Well, I got to go to the chiropractor, but that's a pain in the butt, the expense of doing it, blah, 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 until they get to the point where now they see the opportunity cost, and then they see all the things because they can do that, and now they can actually get to the treasure chest of all of the other stuff.
And I love that you said it, because I was going there too. It's dreams. Like these are the dreams I've given up on. The ship sunk. I'm never getting that back. Right? Back to our Titanic. Right? And it's like, well, not necessarily. like what's the blue thing, the diamond, right? Gotta put my blue brooch diamond down here now.
The purple heart diamond.
Yeah, that thing. That whatever that thing was. Yeah. That thing. Right? Like I gave up on it. I've given up on it and learned to deal with it up here. And I've got the pain, but the pain it's worth it. Somebody knows how to dive down and get that. Yeah. What do you got?
Fun fact, just because I've shared this with you before, but my friend, if you've watched the Titanic, the floating door scene.
Yes.
If you look at the deleted scene, there is a Chinese man who's floating on the door. That whole story is actually based on my friend's grandpa. one
Come
of 6
on.
Chinese who actually, I'm not even kidding you.
That's so
I'm
cool.
not even kidding. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
You got
yeah.
a direct connection. That's super
Steve
cool.
Fong. Steve Fong, if you're watching.
Come on. Steve, superfan Steve Fong? Really?
Superfan Steve Fong.
Steve, you're holding out on us, man. All right, future guest, Nicole, track him down. So folks, your icebergs are hiding treasure, and they are just a barrier between you and your dreams. I think that's what we've learned today. And
Yes.
and you should really go see
Yeah.
your chiropractor. I think it's the other thing we learned today.
Sure.
Any
Yeah.
chiropractors out there?
So-
We're looking for sponsors. Just saying.
We are. So that being said, hey, just because we got to get out of here.
Yeah, right.
So we just learned all about diving deeper in order to give value, in order to get to that treasure chest, right? Hopefully this made sense to you. We're going to explore this, I think, a little more by diving into the offer stack and doing some splintered offers next week.
I like that.
So when we get there next week, and we're diving through it, I think it's worthwhile to come up with a couple different examples. So whether it's a service person who's doing like physical labor versus a medical person, and we'll break down maybe a marketing or a consultant of sorts,
Yeah.
and break out each of those 3 things so that we can show people how it matches up with this framework that we just built out of the blue. No pun intended.
Intend your puns, you coward. Intend those puns. I think should we do a call for guests? Should we, if somebody has an offer stack that they want to, we will value your stack of offers live and on screen.
Yeah, we might have an observer today who might want to chime in. Who knows?
Okay, good. If you have a stack a stack of offers that need to be valued, we would like to talk with you, and we would like to help you, because that'll be so much more fun. So if that's you, and even if that's not you, reach out to us. Send us your questions, ideas, complaints, anecdotes, memes, and offers of guestdom to info@sketchyideasshow.com, or reply below wherever it is you happen to be watching this. And a member of our production team will get back to you appropriately. Come back next week when we crack into even more sketchy ideas live. And remember, just because it's a sketchy idea doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. See you next time.